Hey, check out the Rugby Rant podcast show.
Yeah, if you're not checking it out, Scott's going to come to your house and knock on your door and punch you right straight in the mook. No, just kidding. Hey, I'm Rob the Hammer Schmidt, and we're back at you with the Rugby Rant. And today is, I always say every episode is extra special, but this one runs really close to my heart for a lot of different reasons. But a big part of it is everybody knows, if you've watched this show for any length of time, that I love to talk about youth rugby programming, because at the end of the day, without youth rugby programming, we've got nothing. We need to develop rugby at its lowest age levels, lowest age grades, so that we have players and we have fans and we have folks that are supporting our rugby community. And speaking of which, I have two wonderful guests for this episode. I've been chomping at the bit trying to get this one scheduled for, it's got to be 2 months since I had a conversation. It was sometime in April down in Indy. We had a conversation and set this up, and now we're ready to get it locked and loaded. I've got two great guests. It's Carrie and Jeff Cowdrey of Ridge Rugby Academy in Sparta, Michigan. Carrie and Jeff, welcome to the Rugby Rant podcast show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
So, Carrie, you and I sat down. Jeff was busy. He was coaching Davenport University's women's program in the Sevens National Tournament. It was wonderful to see those ladies, and they have some really talented gals, some of whom played for David Fee at the Midwest Championships this last weekend, which was awesome to see. But you and I sat down, and we had a great conversation. It carried on and on, probably well over an hour. And it's there that you kind of talked about Ridge Rugby Academy. And I want to dig deep into the weeds in this. So I'm just going to share a quick graphic with everybody. So here it is, Ridge Rugby Academy, Sparta, Michigan. That's just north of Grand Rapids. They have youth through high school, boys and girls. And there are kind of three major tenets: skills that stick, safety comes first, and coaches who care, which I love all those things. And their mantra is rooted in unity, led by heart. We welcome all to share in the joy of rugby. And it is an absolute joy to sit down and talk to the two of you. So, Carrie, first of all, we had that opportunity to talk in April. Where did this idea of Ridge Rugby Academy come from?
In all honesty, it goes back literally to the 90s when I was introduced to the sport. Again, I didn't play. I met Jeff, and he was playing for Michigan State. And as time went on, 30 years later, I've watched our kids, I've watched many friends' kids just aspire and grow with the sport. And it was one of those things where it kind of died here in West Michigan. It was huge. It was really huge there for quite a while. And I wanted to make sure that when the time was right for Jeff and I, that we gave back to the community, because so many people, when Jeff coached high school rugby, and we had high school rugby here in Sparta, there were so many loving families and people that just love the sport, and their kids have done amazing things and have gone on. And I wanted to be able to bring it back to the community, and I wanted to grow it again. So the academy actually came from the fact that most people are like, you can't really have an academy. I'm like, I can. Because we're not a school, we're not anything. But if you look back at sports, academy goes through pre-K through high school, which is what we want to do. We want to go back and engage and enrich the younger kids. A lot of times now with rugby, everybody wants to jump in at the high school level. And I understand that. So you already have athletic kids and kids that are playing multiple sports and things like that. But in all honesty, we need to bring it back to the pre-K through fourth grade and middle school. And so that's where the academy came from.
I got to ask you this with that in mind, because I think this is a really important touch point, especially for those who want to see rugby develop at its lowest levels. So you talk about pre-K through all the way through high school. Where do we see that kind of progression into tackle? So in other words, at what levels do we see flag from Ridge Rugby Academy? Is there a touch component to it? At what level do we see tackle develop? So kind of give everybody an idea of what your roadmap and vision for those contact areas and how they're introduced to kids as they progress through the academy.
Yeah, obviously the K through fourth grade is a big, it's a learning a portion of that. I mean, you're teaching kids you're teaching kids the basics of the sport. You're getting them involved in the sport. You're getting them to understand the dynamics of the sport. That's what you're shooting for there. You want them engaged fully 100% of the time.
And tag and flag.
Yep.
And then we don't introduce it until like football. I mean, it's the same regiment that football follows for their programs. We don't teach it in first grade. It definitely is a progression. So you're learning pre-K through fourth grade ball handling, passing skills, coordination, all these skills, tag and flag, but you don't bring that into their introduction of the sport until middle school or high school, when they are ready to be able to engage and I think that's where rugby kind of gets like a bad rap, is that everybody's like, oh, it's so rough, and I'm like, well, it can be. Like, we just all watched the World Cup, right? We just all watched soccer. We watched how rough soccer is. And the things that happen, the kicks, the trips, the this and that, whatever, it's rough, right? So we do follow the same football, rugby. You can't tackle until you're in middle school and high school, and it has to be appropriately shown and smartly, given the guidance to be able to do that. So, it's unfortunate, but I understand it coming from being a parent of kids that played sports. But, look into it a little bit. And, if you have the right rugby club and people that are influencing, we're going to make sure that they're not going to get hurt. I mean, that's definitely not anything about the sport at all.
So let me ask you this. How do you guys address those concerns? Because I've been there. I've been through that process. I coached my own son through, his progression through rugby. And of course, he's now 26 and playing in men's clubs. But how do you convince parents? What do you say to parents to allay those concerns or fears that rugby is a brutal game? How do you answer that?
I think just like anything else, you're completely and totally forward. I mean, obviously I coached football and basketball, the high school level for years. I mean, you had kids who, hurt knees, shoulders, lowers. Any sport, any athletic event that you're doing, there's always a risk of getting hurt. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Yes, there's a more physical nature to what you're doing in rugby, but you also go through, and again, coaching football and rugby for so long, you also know that what you're doing in rugby is you're teaching them to tackle the right way, with the heads up, with you don't have the pads, you don't have that physical violence that you have with pad to pad. So getting them to understand what you're doing from the very beginning, especially when they're at the youth program, that K through 4, when you're doing the touch and you're doing the flag and things like that, understanding as they progress through this thing and the constant communication you're having. We've been lucky enough with the kindergarten through fourth grade kids. We've had a lot of parents who are there. They see what they're doing. We talk to these folks afterwards, so they understand. And some of these kids have parents who have played. So they've got understanding of that too. But the ones that don't, that, you know, their kid wanted to come and do the whole thing, having those conversations as you move from the kindergarten through fourth grade to the middle school program, and understand what's going to happen there, but also having them understand that there is a method to what we're doing and how we're doing it. So the more upfront you can be with everyone, the better off you're going to be. And part of that comes from the communication with the parents.
I love that. Yeah, you got to be upfront. I mean, it's a contact sport, no doubt about it.
Yep.
You know, injuries are going to happen in contact sport. But that being said, we're going to try to develop, you know, in those programming, a safe environment in which we develop their skills in a contact sport. I love that idea. So let's talk about this now, Carrie. When you and I spoke, you were pretty clear that, you know, and I got the sense that you had a lot of individuals who could coach, Jeff included, who could coach, but their strength lies in coaching, not necessarily in being an administrator. Did you personally have to like overcome any concerns or fears on your own to get to that point where you got this going?
He was the last one to buy in. The absolute last one. And going back to when I said, you know, Jeff had a extremely robust high school program. Like literally they went to nationals in the 90s. They went to the 2000s. And I remember we had 3 little kids, and I looked at him and I said, I will not be your administrator. I will not do anything to help you. There is no way. Do not ask me for help. I cannot do this. So again, my 30 years of observation, I have seen so much. I've seen so many wonderful things. I knew what my purpose was with rugby, and knowing that he wanted to continue. And our friends, Danny on our board, she's the head coach for Aquinas women's rugby. She's been spending 2 years grassroots building that program. Danny is amazing. She's also from Sparta, Michigan. Greg Peak, our other board member, he has spent thousands and thousands of hours developing and meeting people from all over Grand Rapids to grow the sport. He started the junior program. Him and Jeff have actually coached our kids in baseball, softball, soccer. I mean, so the roots here are really deep is where I'm trying to get with you. And what that meant was when we finally all met as a group, and I met Danny and got Jeff to finally say yes, and Greg was a yes. It's a kind of a magical group, and it's an unexpected. You're not going to hear this story from very many places. Jeff and Greg played rugby together forever with the Gazelles, and then again raised our kids together. So we go roots and roots and roots deep, and that's what makes this club special, is that they all came from rugby. They all did other sports. They did what they needed to do for their kids, and now they're coming back again and focusing on it and realizing that, hey, you know what? We do really need, he's a university coach. We need a feeder program here in Michigan. You know, Danny coaching for Aquinas. We need a feeder program. You know, we lost sight of that a little bit. And so my deep roots was observing all of this and just going, there's a need. There's an absolute need. And I'm going to be bored because my kids are gone. And I need to figure out what I'm going to do with my husband, because he's going to coach forever. And here's where we are. No, it truly is a passion of both of ours.
The thing I love about this story for the two of you guys is that, you know, you're both pursuing your passions that suit your personalities and what your strengths are. And I love the story, your story, Carrie. I mean, we have no offense, Jeff, but like there are tons of guys like you and I out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Guys who play that want to come back, that want to play. I mean, to be honest with you, like my son's a high school teacher, I would like nothing more for him after I retire from teaching, for him to start a rugby program in his high school and for me to go, I'm coming down for the duration of the season and I'm going to coach with my kid. But I think, Carrie, your story is compelling because, I think there are a lot of passionate parents that want to get involved and want to help, and they like sitting on the sidelines but they don't know enough about the game because they never played to be able to say, okay, I can put my hand up to coach. But boy, they have strengths in marketing. They have strengths in finance. They have strengths in starting 501c, 3 charities. They have strengths in fundraising. They have all these passions and strengths to that can lend themselves well to starting a youth rugby program like Ridge Rugby Academy, right? Thank you for the T-shirt and the hoodie, by the way.
I love that you sent the picture of your cute dog sleeping by it. That was I was
but in all honesty,
that made me calm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. But that's what I love about that, Carrie, is you said, look, here's what I do well. And you kind of put your foot forward and took that part by the reins by starting this program. But you were also smart enough to get other people involved who also have strengths that lend to a wonderful and brilliant program. So I got to ask the both of you, and you may have different perspectives here because you do each play your own role. What were some of the challenges to creating this organization? And so there's 2 parts here. And if somebody else was starting something similar, what's like one piece of advice that you might give them that they absolutely need to know? So what were the challenges? And then what's one piece of advice that you would extend to anybody who's doing something similar?
That's a great question. Well, first off, I'd listen to the people that you weren't going to listen to. Because my first
you can't tell me he doesn't listen to you throughout that 30-some years of marriage, right?
My first response was no. No, it was. I mean, you coaching high school for as long as I did, and then still coaching college right now. There's the time gets more limited. But there's a part of it where you're empty nesters, but when the people that you're with, you want to be with, and you know that you want to be involved. Greg Peak, who I've known for 30 plus years, Danny, who I've known for 3 or 4 years now. When you know these people, Greg Telezan, to the whole works, when you know that there's an opportunity to be involved in something, for as long as we have all been involved in, you tend to listen to reason after a while and realize that this is something that, yes, you really want to do. I mean, and we've been pretty lucky on the west side of Michigan, especially in the Grand Rapids area, with the number of high school teams that we do still have around here, and the friendships and the camaraderie that we've had with these groups. You want to be a part of that, and you want to see that build, and you want to see what happened back in 1998. You want to see that continue down the road. So there is a part of you in the beginning where you go, no, this is not what I want to do. But then all of a sudden you realize that, yeah, it is something that you want to be involved with. And we are very lucky because I'm not great at the administrative part. She is phenomenal at it. She pushes us to be better at what we're doing. She pushes us to be better at what we're trying to build. And for coaches, sometimes that's hard. If you're just a coach, it's hard to see the behind the scenes stuff. And so that part of it has been huge I know for Danny and Greg and I, because we've been so involved in the coaching part of it for so long. But understanding all that goes into it and buying into that brings some bring some appreciation to what you've had for so long that you didn't quite realize sometimes was always there.
And you're talking about 2 college and university coaches. You know, I mean, when you go back to, like I was trying to tell you earlier, we're blessed. We in West Michigan have a huge, I mean, Jeff's coach from Michigan State is an Eagle, Dave Poquette. Greg Telezan, who coaches at Davenport University, is an Eagle. We have women. Olivia Ortiz played for Davenport University. You know, I mean, we have like this special bond. And what happened was, I think we just took a nap. And we, that's the best way that I can put it, was we had all these things in place. It was so great for so long. And the nap, I think, came from Jeff and his other, you know, they were raising families. We were raising families. And so now it's like, okay, who's going to reignite this fire? And the fire is there. Like, it's the coolest thing ever. The people, this past weekend, just being at Hard Rock Sevens, it was like, it ignited my fire again. I can't explain my love for the sport. I hope you saw my funny article that I wrote for, you know, trying to attract people. But I met it in 1994. And we had so much fun. And beyond that, I've watched kids. I've watched Jeff be their second dads. I've watched the opportunities that they've had to go to college, to play multiple sports, to grow within football, to grow within basketball, to grow within. It wasn't just about rugby. It's an all-encompassing experience, is all I can. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I coach wrestling, and I've gotten in the last 4 years, I've gotten into coaching girls wrestling. And I always talk to the parents and the girls. I don't have daughters. I have wrestling daughters, and you know, to see them have success and to see them grow, there are fewer things that are better than those experiences. So I can totally understand where you're coming from in that regard. So, like, each of you, what's one thing in starting this initiative, what's one thing that you would say to somebody who wants to do something similar in the United States? What's one bit of advice you would give them? And I'll ask each of you to give your bit.
I would say, well, first off, you got to find the right people. And you got to find, you have to find the people that are willing to buy in, because the beginning stages of it, I mean, it's, you want it to last. And for it to last, you have to find the people who are willing to make it last. And, you know, as I said, Greg and I have been coaching forever, and Danny's just slightly younger than us. I mean, she's very younger than us, but she is all in on this. So you have to find the people who are willing to put the time in, who are willing to take that, you know, in the summer, the Tuesday and Thursday, and in the fall, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, willing to put that, you know, that 6:30 to 8:30 time frame, or the 6 to 8, or the, you know, 5 to 7, whatever you're going to do, whatever time frame you're going to coach, you have to be there, because that's a huge part of it. I mean, you being there makes all the difference in the world, and you putting the time and effort will start to impact the kids that are coming in. You know, when we started the high school program back in '98, it was 2 days a week. When we started to grow and evolve, it became 3 days a week, and then 4 days a week. And then you understand, and then you're talking about the travel on the weekends, and you're talking about games, and you're talking about 3 different teams, and where you're going to be on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and where's the seaside going to go, and all this stuff. So you have to understand that you're bought into this, because it's very easy to go 1 day a week and, you know, do this. But if you want to build whatever it is you're going to build, and you want it to be as successful as you want it to be, and you want the impact to be, and the success is one thing, but the impact to the kids is going to be the bigger thing. And that impact means the time. And for me, that's, you have to find the right group of people, and you have to find the ones that are going to be willing and able to do what your vision is.
100%. Carrie, you're on the administrative side. What was one piece of advice you'd give somebody that wants to do something similar?
In all honesty, when I started this and we sat down and had our first meeting, I said, I'm really only asking you for 1 year. And they looked at me and they're like, 1 year? And I was like, we can totally kill you in 1 year with volunteer time and all the things that need to be done, because it is true, right? One of the questions that you asked is, where would I love to be in 10 years? I would love to have my own little cute clubhouse with 2 fields and a pre-K through high school academy running. That would be my dream, and I think yours too. Like, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be, it just has to continue to share the traditions and everything and that we love. But to go back, I mean, I really, really honestly, we ask a lot of people. The volunteer time, the Danny and Jeff, Greg. I mean, Greg does the lines on the fields. He's the one that, helps coordinate everything. There's all the behind the scenes stuff that happens, not just the coaching aspect of it. And so you're asking so much of someone. We are bringing on 2 gentlemen right now to help with our high school boys team. And they're wonderful. They're extremely wonderful. And I sat down with them one night and I'm like, do you really understand what we're asking of you? One's newly married, and I'm like, do you really understand what your wife is asking of you?
Does she understand what you really are committing to?
And I'm going to tell you a cute little story. So Ashley is 2 years old. No, 2 hours old. Excuse me, 2 hours old. And Jeff looks at me and he says, I'll be back. And I said, where are you going? He goes, I have to go to rugby practice. I'll be back. And I was like, you have to understand the world, kids. You have to understand the world.
That's awesome. All right. So I want to ask this. Many of us have started youth programs, and I kind of tipped my hand to that earlier, that I've done the same. We had a conversation off screen about this. I started a program here in my neck of the woods with another gentleman. And the difficulty was always finding knowledgeable coaches, and you're going to have turnover because people want to coach their kids and then their kids move on. That's what happened to me. That's what happened to Mike. So how has Ridge Rugby Academy met the challenge of finding quality coaches? And then what can rugby supporters do to support these types of efforts once they get them off the ground?
I think I kind of alluded to this earlier with the fact that we've still got, the Gazelles are still here. We've still got a pretty good base. I've been doing this for a while, and we're kind of past, our kids doing, travel softball or travel soccer or anything like that. We're kind of past all that. So we're kind of in right now. So in that respect, we're pretty lucky. I know the when you're talking about some of the programs around the state of Michigan, the Detroit Tradesmen kind of have the same thing. They started a youth program, but they've got a very good base. They've got a very good, well-established rugby team over there. Same thing with Detroit RFC. They've been doing a lot of stuff over the last couple of years with some of the stuff they've been doing. So they've got a good base and a good foundation for their club. Grand Rapids Gazelles, same thing. And Davenport has helped with that a lot. We've been able to produce, Davenport University, for the men and the women, have been able to produce some really solid kids who have moved on from playing at Davenport to go and coaching a high school team, Granville and things like that. So when you're talking about that, we've got a really good influx and a really good base of not just ex-players, but guys who are really bought into the system. And I think as far as that goes, I think that's very, very helpful.
We have a mentorship program that
Mm.
we have between Aquinas and Davenport, which is part of the wonderful bridging that we have between Danny and Jeff, because most people would say, oh, they're opposing, but they actually compete in different rugby associations. They have different philosophies and different philanthropies as far as the rugby systems go. And one of the things that Danny brought, and what we're bringing into Ridge Rugby, is having the Aquinas College girls and the Davenport University girls trickle into our coaching system and be mentors, and also work with our youth. It's probably one of the coolest things that we have that most clubs don't have, or most academies don't have, is that we actually have feeder systems into these universities because of Jeff and Danny. And the girls are actually going to get credit for volunteering through the colleges. And so we're really working on creating this mentorship program, which is actually Danny's baby, not mine. I'm speaking for Danny right now. But she really wanted to be able to create that, so that so that's, again, very different. We're very blessed. We're a very blessed community.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's a real good touch point for anybody looking to start a program. If there is a quality university that has a men's and or women's program, to tap into those kids. I mean, I talked about, coaching wrestling. One of the ways I determined whether or not I wanted to get into education was I started volunteer coaching myself at a junior high, the junior high that I went to and wrestled for. And so having an opportunity to provide a pathway, a mentor pathway for those kids to come in and learn, hey, do I want to work with kids? Is this something that I want to do? And then the fact that you guys were creative enough to have a way for kids to get credit to do it. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing work. Should we really be proud of that?
And, any coach will tell you, you bring a high school kid into a youth program, it doesn't matter what the high school coach says. As soon as that junior in high school says, hey, go left, that kid's going to go left. I mean, there's such a bond between those high school athletes and or college athletes and those little kids. There's something that just clicks between them. And, as great as it is for the little kid, it also provides huge dividends for those college kids too, and the high school kids.
I want to go back a little bit here, Carrie, because you mentioned, you're in 10 years time, kind of what's the overall vision. And you talked about having a small clubhouse, having a couple fields, having, a place to call home, if you will, that you control, that Ridge Rugby Academy it's theirs, for all to feel comfortable and welcome. Right. So, I think the eternal problem from the lowest levels up to the highest levels, we even see it in England in the Prem, is funding. How is Ridge Rugby Academy funded? What's that funding model, and have you kind of built out kind of a funding philosophy, if you will, if that makes sense?
No. It started from us and our love of the game, and then to be honest, this happened really fast. So I talked to you in April, right?
Yeah.
And I told you what I wanted to do, and in March, all the stars aligned with all my people, and it was beautiful. And I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. So I did it, and it comes from us, and it comes from one of our best friends who was a personal donor who loves the game as well. And so now I'm on just a series of trying to figure out what are the best ways to raise money right now. And because we're a 501c3, there are extra expenses instead of becoming a club but they're important ones like insurance, our lawyer, things like that, which I felt was very important to have as a foundation of a club to become an academy, because you're involving youth, children, all the way through high school. So I didn't want to just throw something together that didn't have validity, right? So those expenses aren't crazy, but they're expenses. And just charging dues and things like that. So I knew from the beginning that I was going to have to fundraise. So like Saturday, we had Hard Rock Sevens. I ran concessions for 10 hours and flung hot dogs because I wanted to, because I knew that we needed the money. We're having our first rock and roll bowling fundraiser coming up on August 7th. And the money that I'm trying to earn is just for uniforms and for any basic fees for the kids to be able to play in, I'm not right now. I just need basic funds to run basic things, and as time goes on, I do plan to talk to rugby alumni. I do plan to talk to businesses in the area and figure out if there's a way to, our kids played academy soccer, cheer, competitive cheer. We spent all this money doing wonderful things for our kids. What Jeff and I have a difficult time doing, and I think after being those parents that spent all this money doing all these for our kids, is we want to provide something that is affordable, because in today's economy and with things that are going on with sports and everything and how expensive it is. Let me tell you a really short, cute story. South Africa. We met a wonderful gentleman. His son plays soccer, and he was the captain of a soccer, and he wants to play professional. In South Africa, you actually have to pay someone to look at your kid. He told us he would have to pay, was it like 30,000 Rand or something ridiculous for someone just to look at his kid. And his kid is super talented, and it's all backwards to us, I think, as far as how that goes. So make a very long story short, I'm trying to make everything very affordable, but my dream would be to make everything affordable, but for rugby to have their own home in West Michigan.
So you tapped into exactly one of the things that I think is important for people to understand, is that, there was this during the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup, there's this whole conversation going on between Landon Donovan and it was kind of through the airwaves. I don't know how much you guys paid attention, but between Landon Donovan and Alexi Lawless, and it was about that pay to play concept. And Landon Donovan's like, we're missing athletes. And I felt the same way when we were running a program. We wanted it to be affordable. What do you need? You need shorts and socks, right? And to pay for insurance and cover it. And we'll see if we can get fundraising going to pay for the jerseys and things like that. And coaches take them home and wash them every weekend or whatever.
Exactly.
But we wanted it to be affordable. And I love that mantra because for that 30,000 Rand is $1,800 to folks that don't know the Rand to dollar conversion rate. That's a lot of money for somebody to put out, right? And we're hearing stories like that all the time, whether it be volleyball or football or not necessarily as much football, but volleyball and soccer and softball and baseball, is that parents are putting out lacrosse, putting out all this money to get kids on this team or that team or whatever. But what happens to the kids that don't have those funds, that don't have, that the parents that can afford it? And I love the fact that you guys are saying, no, we're going to make it affordable, because that's really important for the success of rugby, because it doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah, it's a basic tenet of that sport.
Yeah,
everybody can be in. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, whatever you can do.
We're all inclusive, and the thing is that going back to Jeff coaching high school, he has some kids that did amazing things, and they would come back around and say, you know, if it wasn't for rugby, I wouldn't have been this fast. I wouldn't have had this opportunity. I wouldn't have. But on top of that, it was, thank you for being my best mentor. Thank you for being my second dad. Thank you for taking me in. You know, I mean, this is what rugby is about. And it's not just about the sport, because it is. Again, to me, it's about the community. And I have had my front door open with 50 kids coming through for a spaghetti dinner that I didn't have enough spaghetti for. But the fact that they came to my house, it was open, and they loved it, and they thanked me, even if they didn't get spaghetti. It really just came down to, like, again, the core and the heart of the sport, which is what I met when I met Jeff. You know, I've never met anything like it in my life. And that's the other thing that we're trying to instill, is to keep that going, to keep the camaraderie going.
You define it so well, Carrie, the heart of the sport. It's one of the things my wife and I talk about, the fact that what makes we as a rugby community in the United States, how do we make it grow? One of the things that we can do at every single level is lean into what is at the heart of the sport. And at the heart of the sport, it's that, you know, it's the community. It's building that community, building those friendships. I mean, Ashley knows from having now getting up to the highest levels, she's played against some people that probably they pounded each other, and now she's playing with them, right? And I'm sure she shared some meals with those individuals throughout the years, and that's what tends to happen if you're in the sport long enough. You know, you share a meal after a match when you bang heads. And then sooner or later, you're in you go to the next level, and you're in a representative program. And now all of a sudden you're playing with that person. And that's what makes it a special sport, is that, the wonderful relationships that can be built. And that includes in the MLR, when everybody in Chicago, everybody can go on the field and meet every one of the lads.
Yeah. Amazing opportunities, and we are so happy for your son. Congratulations. That is like, Thanks. Well. So he's moving on next weekend. No, August 8th.
2 weeks. Yep. The Club National Sevens tournament. Yep. So yeah, we're excited. We'll be in Madison for that. It's going to be a great tournament. And a good friend, a mutual friend of ours, David Fee, is the commissioner, the director of the tournament. And they've got some exciting changes. Not changes.
I've never heard of I've never heard of him in my life. You know,
so they got some exciting things, a couple of apps that are going to help people at home follow the weekend's action. So we're excited about that. But let's talk about Ridge Rugby Academy in just a short amount of time, from March to what is now July 28th, as of this recording. Ridge Rugby has had some early successes. Can you guys just talk about those successes that your teams, your academy has experienced just in the short time that it's been established, and how do those fit within the objectives of the program?
Yeah, I think that the girls kind of bought in immediately, and I think Danny had a lot to do with that. And I was really thankful for Danny being there in the beginning, because obviously me being out of the high school programs for a few years and being with DU, I didn't know a lot of them. And Danny kind of brought them all together through her interaction with them for the last year. And it was really good, because they all kind of bought in right away. You know, we introduced ourselves, we had the first practice. We kind of, felt them out a little bit about what they wanted to do and what they wanted to accomplish. And this is a pretty dedicated and an aggressive sort of group about what they want to do. I mean,
we have 2 girls on our team, by not us, but that were just in era playing for Ireland.
Yeah, they were in Ireland playing for era. So we've got some good girls on this group.
We had a local club that was established, and through whatever it is, we came in at the right time is basically how I can present that. And the girls engaged with us immediately, and they were wonderful. And and again, because of Danny, I would agree with you 100%.
Yep,
Danny was involved in the high school clubs and that in the area. And again, Rob, I'm talking about blessings. I'm talking about West Michigan rugby blessings. We have them everywhere. And the thing is like, even after like this last weekend being at Hard Rock Sevens, there are so many people that were involved. And, you know, it just fell to the wayside. I can't explain it. Can you?
No.
I mean, it just literally, so what Jeff and I are trying to do is, you know, pick it back up again and introduce it and say, you know, hey, we didn't leave. We're still here. We just had 3 kids and we had to figure them out first. And we're back. But
So let's talk about the success. The Rock Hard Sevens, and we're talking about, when you talk about Danny, you're talking about Danny Harris, one of your women's coaches.
Yep.
And then also they competed at the Meyer State Games. Tell everybody, you guys are like lowballing this. Tell everybody how these girls did.
Okay, our first tournament. Look at, I put this all here for you. Our first tournament, our girls won state games gold.
There you go.
And as time went on through the summer, we also won the Dutch
second
place, runner up. And then this past weekend, damn it, Marshall, he doesn't have gifts or trophies or anything, but they took third. And what was so cool about it was we had 2 girls out at Era. We had 2 brand new girls that have never played before. One scored. I mean, it was a phenomenal weekend. It was like, I said to Jeff, I'm like, how cool was this weekend? And it wasn't like our winning gold and runner up and everything. It's again the reintroducing the game, getting the girls involved, getting the girls that haven't played out on the field and scoring and touching the ball and figuring it all out. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Well, I love the fact that, yes, there is some hardware there. You always celebrate that stuff. But the fact that, you know, when you talk about success, you're talking about individual girls who have never played before, who are they themselves experiencing success in the rugby pitch for the first time. And it's when that light kind of turns on that really ignites a fire and a passion from the coaches to the staff and everybody else, because you realize that you're having a true impact on the youth, on young kids, and they're going to go on to do great things. So I got to ask, at every level, rugby leaders have different expectations or a vision of what USA Rugby should be doing to cultivate grassroots efforts. And I got to ask you this, in your humble opinion, your neck of the woods, your corner of Western Michigan, right? What would you guys from Ridge Rugby, what would you guys like to see from USAR? How could USA Rugby support your grassroots effort?
Yeah, we've been having that discussion more and more, and I think that discussion's been going around more and more through all the clubs
generally. Yeah.
Yep. And I think you're seeing a lot of what NCR is trying to do right now with some of the select size and things like that, where they're trying to build it up from what they're trying to do. But personally, I think there needs to be, I think USA Rugby, especially with what you have coming up. You've got Olympics coming up in 28. The men are going to the World Cup in 27. The world going to have the World Cup in 29. But 31 and 33, we're hosting both. And I really, really think at that point, I think USA Rugby, and, you know, we kind of talked earlier about what USA Rugby is trying to do with CRAA, which I think is great. the more we know and the more we get to know about what that's going to amount to will be fantastic. But it's the youth part of this right now, because as you're looking through, let's say you're just talking middle school kids right now, the men hosting the World Cup that's 5 years from now. So now you've got high school kids. The middle schoolers in 5th grade will be in high school at that point.
Right.
The U.S. hosting that men's tournament is going to be huge. And 2 years after that, the women are hosting the World Cup. So I think if you can really start to build that grassroots, but I think that there's a lot of the USA Rugby has programs, but I think a lot of the folks that are involved in rugby right now, especially at the high school level that we've talked to for the past few years, the engagement, they want more of an engagement. They don't want to search it out. They want some of that to come to them, because they're already trying to, as we talked, they're already trying to fundraise, they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. So I think that engagement from USA Rugby, and I think they're trying to reach out more, and I think they're trying to bring that in. You talk about phys ed teachers, and you talk about superintendents, and you talk about athletic directors. All of that is doable, but I think reaching out to the local clubs, like I said, what the tradesmen have going on in DRFC, what we're trying to do here is as part of the West Michigan group, reaching out to some of those places and actively really getting involved with them, not waiting for somebody to reach out. I think that's the feedback that we've been getting from, at least that I've been getting from a lot of the high school coaches that we talk to and things like that. So we would love to see that, but it's also, you want these clubs and you want these communities to start to build their thing. You want them to start to do this on their own, and you want the clubs, and it's difficult for clubs with everything going on with the travel and where you're going and what you're doing and the fundraising and everything like that. It's really difficult for some of those clubs to get that going. When we just talked about the administrative part, we talked about the fundraising part and everything like that. When you're trying to get teams to go from point A to point B to point C during the year, and then all of a sudden you're looking at, okay, how are we going to do this for the youth? That's kind of, you want that joint venture between USA Rugby and some of the established clubs. Danny and I have talked about with USA Rugby finding the pathways, not just in certain areas, but finding some of these pathways in less known areas. How do you find we had the Morton girls up this week, just outside of Chicago. Great kids, phenomenal group of kids. We've got one coming up to. We've got one coming to DU. There's another one going to Aquinas. But the level of play for those girls was phenomenal this weekend. I mean, they ended up taking second. They showed. I mean, coaches were phenomenal, but the girls really showed an acumen for the game, understanding what they were doing and how they were doing it. Sometimes that stuff is missed. And it's always going to be missed. We talked earlier about the size and scope of this country. And when you run into that, it's really difficult to find every corner and every nook and every cranny, when you're trying to find players. Having some more regional camps, things like that. A lot of stuff right now, which is phenomenal. And I love the fact that they're able to use Chula and they're able to use that as a meeting ground. But more of the regional camps. I know years and years ago, Martha, back in the day, did a lot of regional camps. She was involved in a lot of that stuff. One in Chicago, right outside of Chicago, right in Rockford, and things like that, where you could get some of these girls to come in. Some of those regional camps, you may find a diamond in the rough. You may find one of those kids that you might miss somewhere else. So I think NCR is doing a really good job, as far as some of that goes, in building some of those select side teams up and traveling and doing what they're doing. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. And I think, all in all, I think USA Rugby is getting there. And I really think they're pushing forward. I think, obviously Scott has done what I feel is a tremendous job in kind of bringing these guys up, starting that program in Carolina with in the MLR. I think that paid huge dividends for what he's trying to do right now. And I think keeping the MLR doing what they're doing, in addition to having some of those guys play overseas. I'm old school. I always loved the ITTs. I always thought the ITTs were a great representation, but we've moved beyond that to this point. I think the MLR doing what they're doing with the Hounds and the Legion and those guys in this past year, I think that level of rugby has really improved, and I think you're seeing some of the dividends there. Jack, WER. I mean, that has been huge, I think, across the board, because you're giving a huge number of players a big opportunity.
It's a pathway,
but to be seen, and that coincides with some of the girls coming across the pond, coming back to play with the U.S. So I think the steps are being taken. I think there's, for me, the biggest thing, the regional camps. I think the smaller regional camps were huge.
I love that idea. And that's where, because you could do regional camps, you could make it. I mean, obviously there's a cost that would come with being a camper, but you could make it affordable, yet you could pay some of your players. You could then they would have, kids would have contact with MLR players, with USA Rugby players on the men's and women's side, and an opportunity to learn from them. And your coaches could also learn from them too. And again, that pays dividends moving forward. But you talked about geography and some of the challenges, and we spoke before we went on broadcast. Geography and seasonality are the eternal challenges for rugby in the United States. So it begged a question that I thought of here. Should we as rugby leaders do more to align youth rugby, right? I mean, 50 states, that's huge and massive. Should we be in more alignment with, amongst all youth programming in those states? Or, is it really like, hey, let them grow on their own merit?
Well, I think you got to let state by state grow based on where they're at. Part of that, in the Midwest, you've got some big differences in the Midwest. You've got Michigan Michigan women or Michigan girls play in the fall. You've got a lot of states like Wisconsin that plays in the spring. So you've got a lot more states. You've got some states that focus a lot on sevens. They don't do a whole lot of 15s. And until you can get some of that figured out regionally, and that's going to take a big group effort to make that happen. The nice thing is that Michigan can always play 15s in the spring for the Midwest and things like that. But their season is in the fall. For the boys, and I think for a lot of the boys in most of the states, the rugby season is in the spring because it opposite of football. So you get more of alignment with that because of what the sport you're playing. But the girls are going to be based on where they came, what state they're from, what they're doing. Are they playing 15s? Are they playing sevens? We talked to a parent this weekend who from Indiana, and finding the girls, they've got a big area that they go with, and finding the girls to supply a 15s team is difficult. They can do the sevens, but it's difficult to find a 15 team. Morton was talking about. I was going to
say that brings up a great conversation that happens a lot in the Midwest, which is 15s and sevens. Yeah. And, there might be a coach that can only get sevens girls going. So it gets super concentrated, right, on just that. And then the same thing, for 15. So, I don't know. It's a lot like, there's really no journey, right? It's kind of like whatever you want to pick up and whatever you want to focus on is fabulous. And thank you for taking that journey on. And then, you kind of go like this to the kids that you've taken on. And so we're focusing in on 15s and sevens, but then like he said, there's so many other states, clubs, they might do 10s and you're like, well, we don't have 10s, but we could do 10, right. So it's like, where's the happy medium? Like, where are we going forward with this? Is it a sevens base? Is it a 15s base? Does it depend on your geography and your weather? And, it's just, like the definition of it all is very out in the open, I guess.
I think it's
so you do the best that you can with what you have, trying to teach both 7s and 15s because they're the most, watched or seen or heard of.
And I think state by state, you're going to run into a problem because Michigan's going to be vastly different than California.
Right.
And,
right.
Minnesota's going to be vastly different than Florida. So how you work all that has got to be by state based on, like you said, seasonality. I mean, any team in Minnesota is going to be indoors when a lot of those teams are going to be outdoors during that season. Yeah, we're indoors.
Yeah.
I mean, you're indoors.
Yeah.
We have a solid period of time where if you don't have a gym or anything like that, like where do you take your athletes to continue to, I mean, that's our next problem, right? We didn't even discuss that. Like, what are we going to do in the winter? Because we still want to keep the kids going. And
Listen, in 2023, my son was a senior and they played Davenport in November.
Yeah.
It was absolutely blinding snow. So I know more than anybody. It was unreal. I've never seen anything like it. They had to cancel the B-side match. The A-side match carried on, but it was unreal. But that is the problem here, the eternal problem. Beyond that, like I've spoken to John Cullen when he was living in Iowa, a former USA 15s cap player, as well as a former Hound. And he's like, they just don't have the numbers to be able to play 15, so they play 7s. So I agree. I think each state's got to kind of develop in its own merit, which kind of for me is one of the reasons why I think about the national. Like I get that importance of national championships, but like in high school, do we really need a national championship, or should we really be focused just on getting kids as many touches and games with the ball as possible to help them develop and not worry nearly as much about all those national accolades,
Yeah, I agree. And even if you go regionally, I mean, most regions are able to do that. And even if you want to do it regionally, that's the way to go. I think back in the day, I think it was you qualified, sort of like, what you were doing with club 7s or club 15s or everything like that. You qualified through your region and then you kept moving on to what you're doing to get to that national championship. And I think they tried to do the same thing with 15s, especially for the boys. And, they're doing it now with the girls, but it's just so hard to accommodate all of that into something that's going to work for this
everybody
that we have.
In 1999, 2000.
No.
His high school team went to nationals, and it literally, we had the greatest group. Again, it goes back to parents, right? It goes back to who you connect with in the community. They were going to Texas, and it took the best parents and the best, they made it work, but nobody had the money to do it,
Right.
And it wasn't anything that was wrong with anything that what we were doing. It was just, we're a local community high school program that made it to nationals. Woo-wee woo. Well, where's the scholarship for us to get on a plane? And, to go do that. So, it took a lot of like family love and heart, and they did go there. And they didn't win, but they made it there.
But it's funny.
And that's part of it too. I think for the boys, because of football, and I don't know what the time frame is for every state, but I know that you had teams from Utah and California and Indiana and New York and Kansas City and things like that at that national. So you knew that at that point they were moving through that spring season. So you knew a lot of that.
Right.
I think a lot of them, but there's some states right now where the boys are playing fall and spring. even in high
Right.
school. They've got
Right.
they've got a dual season. It's just not possible up here for what we're doing with football and everything like that.
So, to some degree, I and this just kind of came to me, but in thinking back to an episode we did a couple weeks back here on the Rugby Rant podcast show, we talked to, and we've had several conversations with various people who run tours. I almost think it's almost like, rather than worrying about a national tournament, you talk about all the money that it took and the effort that it took for your team to go to nationals. Why not just go, hey, look, every year or every other year or every 3 years, instead of doing a national tournament, we're just going to go on a tour and give kids the experience of a lifetime, experiencing what rugby is like in another country. And we talked about values and what rugby has to offer. That the tour experience would be something that they would never, ever forget again. And you can fit it within your own structure in a way that works for each and every club, even if it's just regional. Even if you say in Western Michigan, Ridge Rugby Academy's put together a tour. Anybody who wants to go, we're going to have a girls team, we're going to have a boys team between these ages, and we're going to host a tour, and giving those kids an opportunity that they might never ever be able to get again in their lives.
I absolutely love. And we have talked about that, because some of the best experiences that the girls that we've met and the boys that we've met along the way are being invited to Midwest Thunderbirds, might be in Florida. They might have never gone to Florida before. Going overseas, that is a blessing. Being able to, just within the United States, be able to travel and be invited to go to a camp here and there and hook up with another. But it goes back, Rob, to the camaraderie of the sport.
Right.
Hey, let's connect with this team and let's go play with them for a weekend, and they're going to host you, and you get to go to Tennessee. You get to go to Florida. You get to, but yes, 100%. The Ireland, the embracing going to overseas is amazing, but let's start here in the US. We have the gifts and the people and the clubs and the connections to be able to do that. But it seems like somewhere along the line, we just got really squared off, and everybody decided to do their own thing. And I get that. I'm reaching out constantly right now, hey, what do you think about being our friend? Really, hey, do you think, because we're going to come up with the schedule with the local teams to do high school games and stuff like that. But I want to be able to take these kids, and I want to be able to take them to Indiana. I want to be able to take them to Illinois. And I want to be able to have them compete against other teams and meet other kids. And that's the whole other part of the game, is the social connection, I feel personally.
100%. Yeah, we talked about we talked to Tim Brown, of course, Strong Leg Rugby, and a couple weeks ago we talked to Nick Johnson from Inspire Sports. Both of them run touring organizations, but there's also even Nash Bash has a high school event, and it's for somebody in Michigan, for us was Illinois, but for somebody in Michigan, taking them down to Nashville, in what I think is in March, where the weather's complete crap for most of us in West. You take a little tour, you go down, you play in a tournament, and it can be life-changing and eye-opening for a lot of kids who maybe have not had a chance to get outside of their small part of the world. But as we begin to close up our great discussion about Ridge Rugby Academy and all the things that you guys have accomplished in your short amount of time, what's the most important thing for people to know about Ridge Rugby Academy, whether it's how to find you guys, how to get in touch with you guys, or anything you think it's important for somebody to know about your programming in Sparta, Michigan?
Well, Jeff said earlier today when he was reading through your questions, he said, and it rang, it's 100% true. Our mission is kids, and our mission is kids being able to play rugby and having the opportunity. So if anybody wants to reach out and we can help them find a club, or if they want to come play here, or if they, are looking for and I feel rugby's all inclusive, and that's one of the other really important things. And so I think that would basically be, I mean, of course we want kids to come play here, but at the end of the day, after all we've gone through with our kids and competitive sports and everything, we just want kids to be able to enjoy the game.
Yeah, just get them to play rugby. That's all we're asking for, right? I love it. So, Carrie, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for joining the Rugby Rant podcast show, sharing your experiences, your journey with all of our fans. Hopefully somebody out there who wants to do what you guys are doing will be inspired and have kind of a roadmap for how to go about it. So I really appreciate you joining the Rugby Rant podcast show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate you. I didn't see your shirt though.
Yeah, I was just going to put it up there. So, yeah, and I'm sure we'll run into each other at some point here in the not too distant future. Not only will you see each other in November at the All Blacks Ireland game, we saw each other in Indy for the women's, the CRA National Women's Sevens Championship, and I'm sure we'll catch one another at some point here within the next run of international games. Or
we might have some things coming up. I'm not really sure.
We hope so. We hope so. So once again, thank you so much for joining the show, folks. If you want to get access to anything about Ridge Rugby, find out more. What is it? RidgeRugbyAcademy.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then they can find you on Facebook, I know, at Ridge Rugby Academy, Instagram as well.
Yeah.
There you go. So reach out if you want to go up to Michigan and have an opportunity to play other boys and girls high school programs. There's your opportunity. Take a little tour, go up for the day, go up for 2 days, and experience some great rugby. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Jeff. It's been an absolute pleasure. And for folks and fans of the Rugby Rant podcast show, remember, we aim to grow rugby one fan at a time, and it's through the efforts of Carrie and Jeff and all the people that Ridge Rugby is involved with, that the growth of rugby will continue. Thank you so much for joining the show. We so much appreciate all that you guys have done and will do.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys at